The first time I heard Nina's voice, I was crammed in a utility room on a rig off the coast of Malaysia, trying to fix a busted calibration panel while dodging a monsoon outside. My Aunt Ruth had called earlier that week, insisting I just give the girl a chance. I rolled my eyes at the time. Ruth had been trying to set me up with someone since my first deployment. But that night, after my shift ended and the rain started hammering the window like it had a personal vendetta, I figured, why not? Her voice was calm, low, and kind of sarcastic in a way that made me smile. "So, you're the guy who thinks FaceTime counts as a first date?" she said. "My standards are pretty low out here." I joked. Clearly, that was how it started. "My name is Darren. I'm 34 years old, and I split my time between Houston, Texas, and whatever corner of the ocean my company sends me to. I work as a marine engineer, long shifts, longer deployments, and a life that most people couldn't stick with for more than a year. I've been doing it for 12. Nina was different. She didn't flinch when I told her I'd be gone for 10 weeks at a time. She didn't get passive-aggressive when I couldn't answer texts right away or got too tired to talk after a 16-hour shift. She just adjusted. She asked questions about my job. She remembered the names of my crew. She sent care packages with socks and homemade granola bars like it was the most natural thing in the world. I'd never met anyone like her. We met in person for the first time 6 months after that first call. I had a 2-week break in Houston, and she flew down from Atlanta to meet me. It could have been awkward. Instead, it was like we'd been together for years. We spent the whole first night walking along the bayou trails, talking about music and family and how my aunt had basically ambushed us both. "You know, she told me you were a quiet guy who needed someone to balance you out," Nina said. I laughed. "She told me you were patient and in your 30s without a criminal record. So, basically perfect." That trip went by fast. Too fast. But we kept going. I flew to her when I could. She came down during the longer breaks. After a year, I proposed in a parking lot behind a seafood place we both liked. I didn't have a ring yet. I just asked. She said yes without blinking. We got married 4 months later, small ceremony, just family and a few of my crew buddies who were in town. My folks were thrilled. My mom kept saying things like, "Finally, and you got lucky, son," every time Nina walked into the room. I thought we had it all figured out. Even with the distance, we kept a rhythm. Video calls every other night, gifts exchanged through mail, surprise flowers, handwritten letters when the Wi-Fi went down. When I came home, it was intense. We'd fight over who got to make breakfast. We'd hole up in bed for 2 straight days, just catching up. My family loved her. They thought she was the anchor I'd needed. Someone steady. Someone strong. Back then, I thought so too. A couple months after our first anniversary, I got the offer. It came through while I was docked in Aberdeen, going over the final stress tests on a submersible pump system. My supervisor handed me a folded packet with a grin that said it wasn't a suggestion. It was a multi-country assignment: Brazil, Angola, Norway, over 14 months, spread across different rigs. The kind of opportunity that only came around once every 5 or 10 years. The money was good. No, better than good. Life-changing. I called Nina that night. "They want me to take this new contract," I said, hesitating. "It's long." "How long is long?" she asked, her voice already tightening. "Over a year. Broken up. With small breaks in between." She was quiet for a moment. "Then where?" "Everywhere." I laughed, trying to play it light. I'd get more stamps on my passport than a customs officer. Still, I could tell she was processing. Nina never raised her voice. She never snapped. But when she was upset, the space between her words got wider. "You want to take it?" "Yeah," I admitted. "It's a good step. Probably the best one I've ever had." She let out a slow breath. "Then I guess we figure it out." So I signed the papers. Within a month, I was packing again. I didn't like leaving her, but I figured if I could keep showing her I was thinking of her, even from the other side of the planet, it would be okay. I upgraded her car. Renovated the kitchen she always said felt too apartment-wide. Sent her a new espresso machine just because she'd once mentioned the one we had made weird noises. We talked as much as we could. At first, it felt like it was working. She'd ask about the places I was seeing, joke about how she was starting to forget what I looked like without grease on my cheeks. But slowly, I noticed things shifting. She missed a couple calls here and there. At first, she'd apologize. Say she fell asleep early or her phone was on silent. No big deal. But then it kept happening. Whole days without replies. Messages left on read. When we did talk, she seemed distracted. Like her mind was somewhere else. I'd ask about her day and get vague answers, same old, or nothing exciting. Sometimes she'd flat out forget things I told her the week before. But I brushed it off. Told myself she was just tired. Work had probably picked up. Maybe she was just going through something and didn't want to burden me. I mean, who was I to complain when I was the one always gone? Then one of her friends, Andrea, texted me out of the blue. "Hey Darren, saw Nina yesterday. She looked great." Said you got her that necklace she was wearing? Must be nice being spoiled. I stared at the message. I hadn't sent her a necklace. When I finally came home for a 2-week break, I was exhausted in every sense. For countries in 6 months, endless flights, nonstop shifts, and a gnawing sense that something was off back home. I told myself it would feel better once I walked through the door and saw Nina. That the distance was just messing with my head. But from the second I stepped inside, something felt wrong. Nina greeted me with a hug, sure, but it was stiff, polite. Her smile didn't quite reach her eyes, and when I kissed her cheek, she pulled away quicker than usual. Long flight? She asked, already walking back toward the kitchen. Yeah, I replied, setting my bag down. I missed you. She said, like I just told her the weather in Norway. Over the next couple days, the little things started piling up. She was constantly on her phone, laughing at messages she wouldn't explain. She didn't ask about my trip. Didn't offer to do laundry like she used to. Hell, she didn't even sleep in our bed the first night. I found her curled up on the couch claiming the bedroom was too warm. The sarcasm came next. One morning, while I was brewing coffee, I said, I was thinking we could drive out to that park you like. You know, the one with the food trucks. She didn't even look up from her phone. Wow, a whole afternoon with your wife? What did I do to deserve that? I blinked. What's that supposed to mean? She shrugged. Nothing. It's just, nice you remembered we live in the same zip code. I laughed a little, trying to lighten it. Okay. Harsh. She smirked. I'm just messing with you. Relax. But I didn't. I couldn't. Later that evening, after an argument about laundry that somehow spiraled into her accusing me of checking out of the marriage, she looked me straight in the eye and said, honestly, I kind of miss the quiet when you're gone. It hit like a punch to the ribs. I didn't even respond. I just walked out to the garage, sat on the cold concrete floor, and tried to make sense of what was happening. I told myself it was just fatigue, that we were out of sync, that I hadn't been around enough and we'd lost our rhythm. That night, after she went to bed early, again, I stayed up scrolling through old photos of us, trying to find the version of her who used to leave me little notes in my luggage. The woman who once cried when I surprised her with plane tickets to Austin because she'd mentioned wanting to see the bluebonnets in bloom. Around midnight, I went upstairs. She was already asleep, her phone buzzing quietly on the nightstand. I wasn't trying to snoop, not really. I just wanted to see if she'd been talking to her sister like she said. But when I picked it up, the screen lit up with a notification from him. Curiosity overpowered guilt. I tapped into the thread. The most recent message showed a photo. My wife, curled up under our living room blanket, resting her head on someone's chest. Someone I knew. The arm draped across her shoulder had a distinct tattoo I'd recognize anywhere, an old compass with the words, choose your heading. Miles. My childhood best friend. They were on our couch. The same one we picked out together. In the living room I'd renovated for her last year. I didn't breathe. Didn't blink. Just stood there in the dark, phone glowing in my hand, wondering how long I'd been the only one who didn't know. I stood there for what felt like an hour, though it was probably just a few minutes. My brain was frozen, my body stuck between disbelief and nausea. I kept scrolling. The thread was long. Too long. Photos. Selfies of them out at bars I didn't recognize. Screenshots of memes and inside jokes I wasn't part of. Videos. One of them in our kitchen, laughing about how he probably still thinks the oven broke on its own. Another of Miles shirtless, walking through our hallway with a beer in his hand. And then the worst ones. Explicit. Intimate. Disrespectful on every level, not just for what they were doing, but where? On our couch. In our bed. The living room floor I'd refinished with my own hands. Every room told a story I hadn't been invited to. I didn't cry. I didn't smash the phone. I didn't storm into the bedroom demanding answers. Instead, I set it back on the nightstand like it had never left. Quietly, I walked downstairs, pulled an old flash drive out of my office drawer, and plugged it into my laptop. My hands were shaking so badly I had to sit on them for a moment just to stop the tremors. One by one, I transferred the images and videos. The whole thread. I zipped it into a folder labeled simply, NNM. Then I disconnected the drive and locked it in the small fireproof box under my desk. By the time I returned to bed, the clock read 3:07 a.m. Nina stirred but didn't wake up. I laid next to her, the mattress between us feeling wider than the Gulf of Mexico. I stared at the ceiling, counting every little sound the house made. A creak in the wall. The hum of the fridge. The faint buzz of her phone receiving another message from Miles. My mind wasn't racing with anger. It was calculating. I needed to think clearly. Yelling wouldn't fix anything. Punching holes in walls wouldn't undo what I saw. This wasn't about getting even. It was about knowing what I'd built, what I'd sacrificed for, was being treated like a joke by the two people who should have known better. And yet, there I was, lying beside her in silence. Not because I forgave her. Not because I was afraid. But because I needed control. I needed time. Let her think I was still clueless. Let her believe the mask hadn't slipped. Tomorrow, hell, maybe even the next day, I'd ask a few casual questions. Keep it light. Play the part. But when I confronted her, I wouldn't be guessing. I'd already seen the truth. I just needed her to lie to my face. 2 mornings later, I made breakfast. Eggs, toast, black coffee, just how she liked it. I sat at the table waiting for her, acting like everything was fine. Nina came downstairs in one of my old t-shirts, yawning, eyes puffy from sleep. She gave me a quick smile. You're up early. Jet lag's still kicking, I said. Made coffee. She poured herself a cup and sat across from me, scrolling through her phone like I wasn't even there. For a minute, it was quiet. Comfortable, even, if you didn't know better. I buttered my toast, then said casually, so what you been up to while I've been gone? She didn't even look up. Work, mostly. Catching up with people. Anyone I know? That made her glance at me, just for a second. Just the usual crowd. Miles. The spoon in her coffee clinked against the mug. She blinked. Yeah, I guess. He stopped by once or twice. Cool, I said, nodding slowly. What do you two usually do when he stops by? Her eyes narrowed. What's with the 20 questions? I smiled, real soft. Just curious. It's been a long trip. I'm trying to catch up. She sipped her coffee. Nothing weird, Darren. We watched some movies. Had some beers. Talked. He was checking in on me. You know, because you're always gone. I let that hang in the air for a beat. Then I said, can I see your phone? That did it. Nina stiffened like a switch flipped. What? Your phone. Just for a sec. Let me see the thread with Miles. She laughed, sharp and defensive. You're being ridiculous. Am I? Why would you even ask me that? You don't trust me now. I leaned back in my chair, the smile gone. No, I don't. Her face hardened. Well, that's a problem. Because I'm not giving you my phone. Yeah, I said, pulling the flash drive from my pocket and sliding it across the table. That's okay. I already saw everything. She stared at it like it was a grenade. Her lips parted but no words came out. I know about the photos. The videos. The fact that you let him into this house while I was busting my ass thousands of miles away. You went through my phone, she hissed, suddenly furious. Are you serious? That's what you're mad about? You violated my privacy. I scoffed. You violated our marriage. You don't get to act like the victim when you're the one snooping. I wasn't snooping, I said quietly. I was confirming. Nina pushed back from the table, standing up so fast her chair screeched. You don't get to talk to me like I'm some criminal. You're not a criminal, Nina, I said, calm as ever. You're just someone who made her choice. And now I'm making mine. She folded her arms. So what? You're leaving? I stood slower, steadier. Yeah, I'm leaving. I've got a flight tonight. But here's what's going to happen before I get back. Her eyes flicked up, wary. You're going to pack your things and be gone. I want this house empty when I return. You can't kick me out. I can, I said. And I am. She took a step forward. This is my home too. Not anymore. Nina's mouth opened, then shut. For the first time, she didn't have a comeback. I picked up my plate, dumped it in the sink, and wiped my hands on a dish towel like the conversation had just been about the weather. Then I grabbed my keys and walked out the door. Not a single look back. The day after I left, I walked straight into my cousin Philip's law office. He'd been practicing family and civil law for over 15 years, and more importantly, he wasn't the type to sugarcoat anything. I laid the flash drive on his desk. You sure you want to do this? He asked, giving me a long look. I'm sure, I said. I'm not looking for revenge. I just want to do this the right way. Philip plugged in the drive, scanned a few files, and let out a slow whistle. She's not just cheating. She's reckless. This is enough to file for a fault-based divorce and potentially more. I leaned forward. What do you mean more? Well, he said, swiveling his chair slightly. Texas has a civil tort option for something called intentional infliction of emotional distress and, in rare cases, alienation of affection. But there's also a lesser-known provision under what's called emotional tampering. It's tough to prove, but if the third party, Miles, in this case, knowingly and deliberately interfered in your marriage, you can sue. I stared at him. You're saying I can take him to court? With this evidence? You have a shot. He printed out the preliminary forms. I signed them. It wasn't about money. God knows I had enough of that. It wasn't even about pride. It was about standing up for the version of me who believed in people too much, who sacrificed his peace for a picture-perfect marriage that never really existed. A few days later, Nina texted. Nina, can we talk? Please. I'm sorry. We don't have to do this like this. I didn't reply. She followed up the next morning. Nina, please don't go public with this. I know I messed up, but do we really need to drag each other through court? Still, I said nothing. I wasn't going to argue with someone who thought silence was negotiable. The divorce papers were filed. The lawsuit against Miles was submitted the same day. My lawyer sent the notifications to both of them. A week after that, Miles finally reached out. A pathetic email full of apologies, excuses, and half-truths. Miles, It just happened, man. We didn't mean for it to. You were always gone. She was lonely. I was just trying to be there for her. I forwarded it to Philip without reading the rest. By the time the paperwork was official, I'd changed the locks, cleared out the master bedroom, and removed every trace of Nina from the house. My family asked if I wanted to talk about it. I told them I'd talk when there was something worth saying. I wasn't looking for closure. I was building something better. Distance. Boundaries. Clarity. The hardest part wasn't Nina. It was my mom. She called after the court filings went public. Her voice cracked before she even got to the second sentence. I introduced you to her, she whispered. I vouched for her. I thought she was different. I sat on my back porch, the one I built after our wedding, staring at the lawn that needed mowing. You didn't know, I said quietly. But I pushed it, she insisted. I told you she'd be a good match. Someone strong. Someone steady. I thought she was too. There was a long pause on the line. Then she said, I'm sorry, baby. I really am. I didn't know how to respond. I'd never heard my mother sound small before. She always had answers, solutions, fixes. But this time, all she had was guilt. After we hung up, I sat there for a while, trying to figure out why that conversation hurt more than the confrontation with Nina ever did. I stopped going into the living room. I couldn't stand it. Every time I walked by the doorway, I saw them there, laughing, touching, like they owned a piece of my life that I didn't even realize I'd given away. So I moved the couch into the garage, took down the framed wedding photos, boxed up everything that even remotely reminded me of her. The house felt like a museum full of broken exhibits. One afternoon, I found myself standing in our old bedroom closet. Her dresses still hung there, untouched. Shoes lined up neatly under the shelves like she might walk back in and grab them any second. But she wouldn't. She couldn't. I opened a black trash bag and started pulling items off hangers. By the time I was done, my hands were covered in dust. The air smelled like her perfume for the first time in weeks. I opened every window. The next day, my dad stopped by, brought a six-pack, and sat with me on the porch in silence for a while. You know, he said, popping a cap, your mom's been crying every night. She thinks this whole thing broke you. It didn't break me, I said, staring out at the fence. It just woke me up. He nodded. Still hurts, though. Yeah, it does. I sipped my beer and listened to the wind push through the trees. They'd all meant well. My parents, Ruth, everyone who thought Nina was the one. But none of them had to live in the house with her. None of them had to open that message thread. None of them had to sit in that silence after everything went quiet. I did, and I was the only one who had to rebuild from it. I set up the camera on my workbench in the garage, right next to the old couch I still hadn't decided whether to toss or burn. The flash drive with all the evidence sat in my hand, cold and solid, like proof of everything I had been too blind to see. I hit record. My name is Darren, I began. I'm a marine engineer. I've spent most of my adult life out on the water, fixing other people's broken systems. Funny how I couldn't see the one breaking in my own house. I paused, looking straight into the lens. I didn't make this video to shame anyone. I'm not here to list grievances or replay the worst moments of my life. I'm making this because I want one person, just one, who's watching this to hear what I wish someone had told me. I leaned forward slightly. When something feels off, it probably is. When someone stops looking at you like you matter, believe them. Don't explain it away. Don't chalk it up to stress or schedules or long-distance fatigue. Trust the silence. Listen to your gut. I looked down for a moment, collecting my thoughts. I loved my wife. I really did. I believed in her. In us. I thought I was building a life with someone who would weather the storms with me. Turns out, I was building it for someone else entirely. I looked back into the camera. I ignored the little things. Missed calls. Distant answers. Jokes that didn't feel like jokes. I told myself I was being dramatic. That I just needed to be patient. But love isn't supposed to feel like waiting in line for a turn that never comes. I reached off camera and held up the flash drive. This thing right here? It's proof. But the truth? I didn't need it. I knew long before I saw it. I just didn't want to admit it. Setting it down, I folded my hands. If you're in a relationship where you're always the one holding things together, ask yourself this. Would they do the same if the roles were reversed? If you got sick, or broke, or just tired, would they still be there? Or are they only around for the good parts? I let out a long breath. I used to think loyalty meant staying no matter what. Now I think loyalty means knowing when to walk away. I leaned in one last time. So I'll leave you with this. If you were in my shoes, if you opened that phone, saw those messages, felt that betrayal, would you walk away? Or would you stay? And more importantly, I pointed at the camera. Why? I clicked stop. The camera blinked off. The garage was quiet again. But I wasn't. Not anymore.